Hi, I'm Michelle, and welcome to the Grateful Podcast, a place where we contemplate how we can eat, live, and lead each day to build a more sustainable world. My guest on the show today is the wonderful Maureen Muketha from Kenya. And her work caught my attention because at just 24 years old, in parallel to studying her master's in nutrition, she's also the founder of a community organization called Tule Vyema, which means Let's Eat Right in Swahili. Maureen's organization works with women, supporting them to grow local varieties of vegetables, helping them to access a more diverse diet, but also bring in new opportunities to earn an income. She's going to tell us more about how her upbringing and what she saw around her motivated her to do this really important work. So today I'm taking you to Kiserian, not too far away from Nairobi in Kenya, to connect with Maureen and hear more about her story. Maybe you could tell me about, what was it about your upbringing that inspired the work that you do today?
So, Michelle, I have my roots in one of the areas that has the leading cases of malnutrition in Kenya. So growing up, seeing women, especially lactating women, having to breastfeed their child, and clearly there was no milk being produced. Seeing a mother have to make decisions or divide her children according to who will eat, say at lunchtime, and some other children will eat dinner. I thought that this should not be the case. People should not be going to bed hungry. A mother should not be making decisions of what child will eat at what time. So seeing women make these decisions, seeing children very malnourished, very weak, such that they cannot play as much, them not going to school is what led me into studying nutrition. I thought that if I am to change this scenario, if I am to change this narrative, it's best for me to address this challenge from a knowledge point of view. So this is what actually led me into studying nutrition.
Yeah, I can only imagine seeing these stories firsthand growing up is just so heart-wrenching, and it's beautiful how you channeled that into a purpose for you to study nutrition and make a contribution to this.
Yes. My undergrad project was centered around knowing the knowledge, attitude, and practices of indigenous vegetables among university students. I saw that students were not aware of indigenous vegetables.
So maybe some people listening don't know what indigenous vegetables are. Could you tell us what they are and why you're so passionate about them?
So examples of indigenous vegetables or traditional vegetables would be spider plant, African nightshade, cowpeas, or amaranth, just to mention a few. These are vegetables that used to be consumed before exotic vegetables came into place. Indigenous vegetables are nutrient-dense foods, especially iron, and iron is a nutrient of concern among women of reproductive age. And also why I am passionate about indigenous vegetables is because they have a short maturation period. Cultivating these indigenous vegetables, one, they do not take very long to mature. They are also pest resistant. They are not affected or attacked by pests as much as the exotic vegetables, and also the nutrition value that they have in our bodies compared to exotic vegetables. Now that we are also tackling non-communicable diseases, these vegetables are very rich in fiber, and what fiber does is it gives you a satiety feeling, so you end up feeling full for long, so also reduces the number of times you tend to snack.
And I think the wonderful thing about indigenous vegetables are everywhere in the world we have our own varieties of indigenous vegetables that we can seek out and support and promote. And that's a part of what you do with Tule Vyema. Can you tell us a bit more about what the vision is of this organization and how you go about bringing it to life?
Our vision is to eliminate malnutrition incidences, which this is overnutrition, which is obesity, non-communicable diseases, which have been on the rise, as well as make our community food secure. So how we do this is we conduct nutrition education health talks where we equip our members with knowledge on bedding practice. And then we also work with young women of reproductive age. We train them how to cultivate and set up sack farms so that they can cultivate indigenous vegetables. So our vision is to have a community that is free from malnutrition, that is food secure. So this also leads to enhanced productivity.
So tell me a bit more about what sack farming is and what makes it an interesting solution, particularly in informal settlements or in areas where there's limited land or water or resources.
So it's basically cultivating food, but not on the ground, now on gummy bags, on vertical gardens or gummy bags. So this means you fill the sack or the gummy bag with soil. And what is interesting is that it is not labor intensive compared to ground farming. It also does not need a lot of water. It also allows anybody who has little space to grow their own food. So you do not need a large space for you to grow your own food, or you do not need land. It enables you to use the little available space that you have.
And so let's say I want to start a sack farm on my balcony in Zurich. How would I go about that?
You can either do it on gummy bags or containers. So you fill the container with soil, and then you also need to have some rocks or some pebbles which will act as the watering system of your sack farm or your vertical garden. And then you plant the crop that you want. So it's very simple. All you need is soil, you need some rocks or pebbles, and you also need water.
And how was it that you came to work with sacks and sack farming in your organization?
Because our beneficiaries or our target group, these are the young women of reproductive age, they live in rented spaces. So they do not have land which they can cultivate these indigenous vegetables. And these are the people who also attend our nutrition education talks. So as a way of making our nutrition education talks more practical, because during the nutrition education talks, we teach them how to best feeding practices. So best feeding practices means eating a diversified diet. And why we settled on the 4 varieties of indigenous vegetables is so that we can also empower these women economically. Remember, these are women who mainly depend on casual work, so they barely have enough money to feed their families, to meet other household needs. So the 4 varieties of indigenous vegetables are enough for their consumption, and then they sell the surplus so that they can be able to meet other household needs.
Wonderful. So it's also an economic empowerment project.
The economic empowerment comes as a secondary, which is proving to be also one of the reasons why many women want to be part of the program. Apart from now them being food secure, they are now able to have some little money which they can use to meet other household needs and make better food choices.
And it's so wonderful. I've read a couple of things about the impact of your work, and it's just so wonderful to see. What do you think has been the most important ingredient in the success of your work and your organization so far?
I attribute our success to persistence and consistency. Changing your feeding habits is not a one-day activity. I keep saying nutrition is not an event. Eating well is not an event, but it's a lifestyle. You know, the perception is eating well is very expensive. So trying to change this notion that eating well is very expensive, and also changing what someone is used to is not easy. So persistency and consistency is our success ingredient.
What do you think is unique or interesting about how you engage with and work with the community?
We have made our community or our beneficiaries part of the program. They do not see Tule Vyema as the know-it-all, but they see Tule Vyema as their friends. So like whenever we are having the nutrition health talks, whenever we are setting up sack farms, we involve them. We have created friendship and working together.
And how is the COVID pandemic impacting the work that you do with the community?
we are not able to access all the areas. So this means we are not able to monitor our sack farms better because of social distancing. We are not able to have our nutrition health talks as frequent as we usually have. Remember, our beneficiaries are casual laborers. So this means most of them actually do not have a source of income because there are no farms to work on. Some of them are involved in house chores like washing clothes or gardening. So they're not called for these jobs. So which means now also their food choices are limited because their income has been disrupted.
Mm. And how do you see this? How do you see this longer term? What do you think will happen for your organization?
I think we now have to adapt and be more flexible, especially for the nutrition health talks. We now have to limit the number of people right now who will attend our nutrition health talks, because I believe even during this COVID time, eating well is part of the precautions we need to take to prevent, to try and protect ourselves against the disease. So, yeah, I think flexibility, trying to see what works for us.
Mm. So in all this work that you've done with your community over the last few years, what is one of the most inspiring moments or stories that really sort of hit your heart that you would like to share with us?
I'd start with one which happened not so long ago before lockdown happened. We were setting up sack farms for one of the Tule Vyema women, and her child did not understand why we are setting up sack farms to cultivate indigenous vegetables on sacks. Currently, the women that we are working with are a pastoralistic community, and consuming vegetables is not one of their traditions. So when they saw their mom setting up this sack farm, they asked, we are planting grass on sack farms, which, like, this shows how this child does not appreciate vegetables. So when we went to visit, after a couple of weeks, when we went to visit their sack farm to see how they are doing, I was really perplexed to know that it is this child who is even watering these indigenous vegetables. So seeing community members and even children very excited about growing these indigenous vegetables on sacks is one of our inspiring moments. And back to the nutrition education talks, seeing our community members tagging along their friends to come and get knowledge on nutrition has been very inspiring to us.
And what have you learned about the educational side of these talks? What's the best way to engage with people and share this information in a way that really resonates with them and has an impact with them?
One is to use the simplest language possible. Sometimes it's difficult to translate some of these nutrition terms, but trying to simplify as much as possible. And also, we try as much as possible to have visual aids, like when we're talking about say hypertension, when we're trying to explain the physiology behind the pathophysiology behind hypertension, we try and show like the reduced diameter of the blood vessel. We try to, like, whenever we are talking about symptoms of hypertension, we show.
And with all of this studying of nutrition and working in the field and getting very passionate about Indigenous crops, how has that impacted how you eat personally?
As I am advocating for eating well, I also have to eat well so that I can be able to talk from an informed point of view. So, and not only me, but also my family members, because I live with my parents and my siblings. And I have noticed each and every time now, even with my family members, even whenever we are going for shopping, they reach out for the whole foods. This is now our second year of eating whole foods in terms of brown rice, brown maize flour. Somehow we've always been eating plant-based protein, so plant protein has not been an issue in our household. We have also now learned to eat every meal with vegetables, and even my younger sister, who was not a fan of these indigenous vegetables, she has now learned to embrace this acquired taste.
Now, Maureen, when I was reading about everything that you do and hearing you talk now, it's easy to forget that you're just 24 years old. And if I think back to myself at that time, I had like so many questions about what I should do to have an impact and doubting my own capabilities. And I'm just saying that because I think it takes a lot of courage to establish your own organization and really so passionately go about creating change in the way you want to at such a young age. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what helps you find the courage to do the work that you do.
What helps me find the courage is I identified a problem, and me making the decision to know more about nutrition so that I can be able to change this narrative, and actually me being able to acquire the nutrition knowledge is what gives me the courage, because I have seen the impact or the knowledge that I have shared with my community members. I have seen the direct impact in terms of them being able to prevent lifestyle diseases, them being able to manage their lifestyle diseases. So seeing the results of the work that Tule Vyema is doing is what gives me the courage. And also the other thing that gives me the courage is being able to identify people, especially other young people or even older people who have done or who are doing what we are doing, and learning from them is something that has also given me the courage to do what Tule Vyema is doing. I think if I had not studied nutrition and I try to address zero hunger from a not nutrition point of view, I think I would doubt myself. But now that I have the knowledge of how to eradicate hunger, of how to prevent nutrition, how to manage nutrition, I become more confident of myself.
And what do you do to keep learning and growing and building that confidence?
I try to read books, especially motivation books and inspiring books, empowering books, because I believe in sharpening the saw. If I want to be like, for example, Barack Obama, or if I want to be like Michelle Obama or any other great leader, it is good for me to read, to understand how they think so that I can emulate that. So I strive, I'm not the best at it, but I strive to add knowledge, not only nutrition knowledge, but also leadership knowledge and all round.
That's wonderful to hear. I really believe in that as well, that we need to not only become deeply curious about the challenges that we're trying to tackle, but deeply curious about ourselves and our leadership capacities and how we work with others towards a common goal. So from all of this reading and work that you've done, what's the most important lesson you've learned about how to lead yourself and others?
The most important lesson that I have learned is discipline, and if it is to be, it is up to me. I have learned that I need to take action. I need to take action for anything that I feel should be done different. So discipline, and also believing in yourself. Sometimes we do not go for our dreams or reach for our goals because we do not believe in ourselves. But if you start believing in yourself and also look back at the journey that you have come from, like where you have come from, and seeing how far, or it might not be, then they might not be great things that you have done, but you are not where you were 5 years ago, where you are 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's so important to actually look back and acknowledge and not always just be looking forward. Yeah.
Yes.
So from these books that you've read, if you could invite one person to dinner to talk with them further and learn more from them, who would that be?
I think not from the books that I have read, but the person would be, I'd say, Beyonce. And why I would say Beyonce is because I believe, I think she has overcome great challenges because one, she's a Black woman who has done so much. Even her performance in the Coachella festival, bearing in mind she had just given birth to twins and she had to show up for practice. I believe she had the option of saying, I've just given birth, I need to take care of my children, or I am not in the best of weight to start exercising or to start practicing, but she took up the challenge. So I think I would want to know what really motivates her, even when I feel if I was in her shoes, I would not show up, but she shows up. And she's a great woman who I really would love to know what goes on in her brain.
So I think we can stay tuned for a Tule Vyema Beyonce collaboration in the future.
Crossing my fingers.
Oh, fantastic. So, I mean, the work that you do, you obviously encounter some big challenges. And what do you do to not lose hope when you face these big issues?
What I do is looking back and trying and seeing what is Tule Vyema trying to achieve. I believe challenges are there to learn. Challenges are not there to slow you down, but to make you learn or to see something that you had not seen or you overlooked. So going back to the drawing board and seeing when I started, what really made me start, like Tule Vyema, for instance, is what keeps me going even whenever I see whenever I encounter a challenge, and also believing that Rome was not built in a day. So this means me encountering a challenge does not mean I have fallen. I believe I have only slid, and the best way to go about it is to wake up, dust myself, see where I went wrong, see what I am trying to address, and move forward. So always looking back to what initially led me into starting Tule Vyema helps me overcome the challenge.
And what's your hope for Tule Vyema in the future? Let's say we are 5 years from now and we are sitting back together to have lunch. What would you like to be telling me?
I'd like to be telling you the number of community members who are now growing indigenous vegetables, not only because of the ones we have worked with, but now our beneficiaries have started teaching others. And the other hope for Tule Vyema is seeing our community members, the women, opening up shops in the market where they can sell these indigenous vegetables. So right now they are selling, but it's not large scale. So I feel that 5 years from now, I'd be telling you, we now have Tule Vyema stores in the market. Now, non-communicable diseases, the hypertension, the diabetes, some types of cancers have reduced because people are now eating well. And seeing the quality of lives in our community improved. And God willing, we have even expanded to other regions, not just where we are working right now, but even to other regions in Kenya and even globally. So seeing people change their habits or starting to make better food choices.
Wonderful. So can you tell our listeners where they can find out more about Tule Vyema and also how they might be able to support you?
Okay, so you can find more about Tule Vyema. We have our social media pages. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, all as Tule Vyema. Website is still under construction. Yes, so if you want to learn more about Tule Vyema, more about eating well, we usually post what we are doing, or also some quick tips of eating well. So if you follow us on our social media platforms, you'll be able to know more about eating well and even support us, because right now, Michelle, as I said, our beneficiaries are casual workers, so also their income they've lost their income, so this means they're not eating well. They do not have the muscle to eat nutritious foods. So as Tule Vyema, we provide them with a nutritious food basket, which has we give them starch, which is carbohydrate, either rice or maize meal, ugali. We also give them a plant protein, beans or green grams. We also give them fruits. And now, since they are cultivating indigenous vegetables, all that makes a diversified diet. And we also give them soap so that they can be able to have wash their hands regularly as one of the ways to prevent COVID-19. So another way that you can support is help us distribute our food baskets, because people are going hungry. People are going to bed hungry. Our beneficiaries are going to bed hungry. And if people are not eating, so this means also their immunity is compromised. So it exposes them more to the virus.
So I'll also put a link in the show notes to a lovely blog post that you wrote for Oxfam about some of your work. I think that gives a really nice overview and some more detail for anybody that wants to find out a bit more.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I must say, when you sent me the email and I read your bio, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a food system expert. I really got nervous at first, but
okay.
I hope I have not been very, very nervous.
You're phenomenal. You do such incredible work. You shared such beautiful insights.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Grateful Podcast. If you liked it, then please go ahead and subscribe and share it with a friend. And I would love to get your questions answered here. So if there's something that you would like answered or explored on this podcast, just send me an email to podcast@thegrateful.com and I'll do my very best to get your questions answered here on the show. Music in this episode came from Blue Dot Sessions.